Welcome to episode 10 of the Will Bring the Popcorn Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brad, this is Josh, and yeah, we're 10 episodes in now. We're double digits.
10. We made it all the way to 10. Who'd have thought we'd have made it?
Yeah.
Not us.
It's been fun, but it feels like we've been doing it forever now, but also a very short amount of time. We're still learning, we're still growing, we're still fully figuring out a format and our back and forth and everything, but we hope everyone's, having a good time with us, and we appreciate you tuning in now for 10 full episodes.
Yeah, 10. We've made it to double digits, and I can't wait to celebrate when we hit triple digits eventually. That's gonna be a ton of fun. We thank you, as always, for tuning in and all your thoughts, comments, everything you share with us. It's really meant a lot to both Brad and myself, so we can't thank you enough. So for our 10th episode today, we are going to be reviewing episode 8 of Apple TV's Masters of the Air, as well as episode 3 of FX's Shogun, and Kung Fu Panda Part 4.
Yeah, all those go together really well.
They really do. It's a good eclectic mix.
Get a little family, get a little fantasy, and a little historical. So it's a little bit for everybody.
Absolutely. But once again, we do have to start this week on a little bit of a somber note to acknowledge the passing of Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, who passed away at the age of 68. Now, obviously, Dragon Ball is one of the all-time most popular, anime series, manga series ever created. It really helped popularize, anime in American culture, as well as, popularizing manga in American culture as well. And it really opened the door to that art form to so many people here. It was obviously a bigger hit in Japan before it came over here, but it was so accepted and welcomed by the masses, really. I mean, Dragon Ball, in all its iterations, is still a big property here.
Oh yeah, we still got movies come out in theaters from it. It's still everywhere. Like it has such a worldwide touch for it, and even for me with him, from our youth and everything, from the Dragon Quest video game series, he did the character designs and artwork for that, which is just legendary. Like if you see that artwork, it's him, it's Dragon Quest. And the same thing with Chrono Trigger, which is still one of my favorite video games of all time, one of the greatest RPGs of all time. And his character designs for that was it's iconic and legendary. Like, you see that art again for Chrono Trigger, even though he has his art style.
Sure.
But that's Chrono Trigger, that's Dragon Quest, that's Dragon Ball, but who created it. But our condolences to his family and everything, but he had such a big impact on the world.
He really did. And for me personally, Dragon Ball is still one of my favorite anime series of all time still. I've watched the entire thing from Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, which people feel about how they feel about it. But coming back and even doing like Dragon Ball Super, he was involved in it just as recently as Dragon Ball Superhero, the recent film that came out towards the end of last year. Like, he was still involved with it. So, obviously it's continuing forward without him at this point, but just an absolute undeniable legacy that he left on the world. And we can't thank him enough for his creations, his contributions to art and to anime and video game culture, like you said. And just, like you said, humblest of respects paid to the man, and thoughts with his family and friends, at this difficult time.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, if you really want to see the impact of like who it's affected with his passing, go on social media and look with his name. There's so many people that I've seen paying their respects to him. Like, you really see how far Dragon Ball and his reach really went. To continue on with our news here, Japan recently held their Academy Awards, and Godzilla Minus One cleaned house. So it won Best Picture of the Year, but it won 8 total awards. So you have, on top of Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Editing, Best Sound, Best Cinematography, Best Lighting, and Best Art Design. So it's incredible that we expected it. We actually thought it would kind of get more nominations and awards here. I think it's only got VFX for the Oscars.
It's only got 1 or 2 nominations, I think, for the awards this weekend.
But big congratulations to Godzilla Minus One. We absolutely loved it. We saw it twice. We saw the black and white. You can go back in our episodes here to see what we felt about the movie. But congratulations to them for just destroying the Japanese Academy. I guess proper phrasing that Godzilla destroyed the Japanese Academy Awards.
It literally did. It cleaned up and well deserved too, because like you said, we love the film a lot, and obviously it's doing well in Japan as well to, clean up on all the awards that it did. So absolutely, just big congratulations to the people that worked hard on that film.
We also got news that the director of the film, Takashi Yamazaki, I apologize if I butchered, he has a new kaiju short film that's going to be coming out March 14th. So he showed off a little teaser. It looked like you got to see a hand, a little bit the face. It looks very floral, tree-like. But yeah, after Minus One, I'm excited to see what he does with this short film.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll keep an eye on where we can find that and share that information with you as well. But yeah, to your point, with the brilliant work that he did on that, I'm excited to. He's made a fan out of me, so excited to see what he comes up with and what that film looks like when it comes out.
Yep,
for sure. But moving into kind of some live sporty kind of stuff, but it deals with streaming services as well. Netflix this week announced a fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. That's going to be taking place on Saturday, July 20th. Now, if you remember from our previous episodes, which you can find back in the archives, cheap plug, Netflix has acquired the rights to WWE, so they are moving into more of the live sports, live, production stuff, and we're wondering, is it kind of a test run for what's going to happen for that?
Yeah, it definitely feels like, who would have seen that this fight was coming? And I'll absolutely say, I don't care how old Mike Tyson is, I would not be standing in front of a punch of his. Even at his age, he could still obliterate somebody.
Yeah, have you seen his workout videos? He's still a monster, and he's still terrifying.
I would never step in front of a fist by that man.
Not a chance.
But yeah, it's interesting to see if this kind of is a test to see how they can handle live infrastructures. I think they've tried a couple other lives. One of them, I think, was for a reality show, and it went very, very poorly.
Yeah.
So they definitely have some testing and things they do to make sure they're ready to have Raw airing every week.
Yeah, because that's going to creep upon us, very quickly. We're already, second week of March at this point, and Raw's going to be there starting the 1st of next year. So they've got time to figure it out, but it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, because it's going to get a lot of eyes on it. I mean, you put Mike Tyson on anything, a lot of people are going to tune in for that, but also Jake Paul's fights do very well, like pay-per-view wise as well. So, I mean, these guys will bring a lot of eyeballs to it. So can they handle that capacity? And, there's going to be, people just tuning in to see the circus more or less. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if, it holds up. There's no streaming issues. There's no lag issues. There's no crashing issues, which does tend to happen when these companies tend to go into like streaming services, go into live sports at this point. You know what I mean? Like some have adjusted and done well. I know Peacock's had the WWE network for a few years now, and they've cleaned that up fairly well, but this is kind of Netflix's big first foray into something like this. So to your point, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah. When they're first getting into doing live stuff, when they've been, uploaded content since here, it's going to be interesting to see exactly if they can handle that and if they've got the right team and infrastructure to handle that live stuff. But yeah, we can't see it not being a test to make sure that they're ready to get that going. But that fight is, I say, it looks like a live action Punch Out.
You've seen the memes online like I have, right? Just the old Mike Tyson Punch Outs, like, oh, Nintendo's playing this since the 90s. I love that.
Yeah,
love that so much.
But yeah, it's curious to see how much other live stuff they get into. If this isn't really a test for WWE, are they trying to expand into a lot more stuff? Sure. Are they looking to go after boxing? Are they looking to go after other really big live events and kind of expand their network and everything from there? So we'll keep an eye on that to see exactly how it happens. I'm sure we'll both be watching that to see how they handle it and see how the fight goes and everything. But
yeah, another thing to keep a little bit of an eye on is, since WWE and UFC have merged into one company now and are owned by the same company, is this kind of a test to also see if they can handle possibly looking into purchasing the rights to the UFC, which I believe they have maybe a year left at ESPN at this point. I don't remember what the exact timeline is for that, but could it be a trial run for that too? Live combat sports. So to your point, yeah, it could be just a trial run to see if they can handle that, to see if they also want to move into that space as well. Because there's a lot of media rights being negotiated for a lot of different things for live sports anyway. And if Netflix can get their hands in the pot as well, like, why not?
Yeah, they're all seeing it as a good money pit to help them. We've had Amazon and Apple and Who was it? Not Hulu, but I think Peacock did Monday night, and did one of the football.
Yeah. Peacock had the rights to one of the playoff games. Yeah.
So they're all expanding into sports more here. So it's going to be curious to see how that continues to expand, and if we lose those networks that we're used to, because we have the Reds and everything locally here, which was Fox Sports. Then it went to Bally Sports, but there's been a really big issue with all that they're not on a lot of platforms, not a lot of areas. So could we see the major sports shifting to a streaming platform that will be available everywhere? So it's something to watch out for, to see if what Netflix is doing expands and creates something else for streaming networks and sports.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
But keeping with Netflix, they did announce that Avatar: The Last Airbender has been renewed for seasons 2 and 3, which, if you're a fan of the animated series, that basically covers the entire series.
Yep.
So we're excited to see. You can look back to see what we thought about the Avatar series. We did enjoy it. There's a little mixed feelings on it out there, but we thought it did a solid job. So I'm really excited to see how they finish the whole story in live action.
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about before, the animated series was such a huge success, and the first season on Netflix touched on pretty much the first book. Now there's 2 more that they could do, and they're getting the chance to do it. So kudos to Netflix for actually taking something that's as popular as this and reinvesting in it and allowing them to continue making the content that they're making. Hopefully, we continue to get that high quality attention to storytelling, and they can have a cohesive, finish to this product at this point. So I'm excited for seasons 2 and 3. I really enjoyed the first season. I think it kept in a lot of the, tone of the original animated series. So I thought the cast did a great job as well. So moving forward with that, I'm excited. Hopefully it's not a significant turnaround to get the rest of it as well. So hopefully they can get to work on that. I know, you shared with me the video of Daniel Day Kim kind of pranking the cast and telling them the news. Go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I guess we were on a Zoom call, and he was running in saying he talked to the network and kind of started going a little somber and talking like, unfortunately they couldn't greenlight us for season 2, but they did share some positive news with me on that, though, is they couldn't do season 2 because they've renewed us for seasons 2 and 3. And you could see on the kids' faces especially that they were like. And then once he said, because you could, all right, I know what you're doing now. Why did you do that to us? But that was really fun to see that bond that they have outside of the series, already having that bond, which is going to help them immensely going into 2 and 3 as, the relationships grow and with the characters in the series. You're already seeing that great bond between the actors. So that was a fun little moment. I think Netflix has it on their social medias and stuff, but you can probably easily find that to watch. Yeah. But it's an entertaining watch.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun moment. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll keep everybody up to date on news regarding that as we see it as well. But moving on to our next story, Young Sheldon has been a somewhat surprise hit for CBS, because I know a lot of people were a little concerned when they moved away from, Big Bang Theory to Young Sheldon. At this point, everybody was like, can it last? Turned out to be a really popular show, really big hit. Not quite to the level the Big Bang Theory was, but pretty close. I mean, the show's been around for 7, 8 seasons? I don't remember the exact total, but it's been around for a minute. And the news broke this week that with the finale of the show coming up, because they are ending Young Sheldon at this point, but Jim Parsons and Mayim Bialik are reprising their roles as Sheldon and Amy for the finale, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see them come back for that and play their characters one more time. Yeah, I'm honestly was really surprised at how the longevity that Young Sheldon had, because I never got into the series. I love the Big Bang Theory. I watched everything there. I didn't really have much want to see Young Sheldon, but I'm glad it's had such a long run, and a lot of people have enjoyed it, because it's even getting a spinoff, and then we'll see if the spinoff lasts as long, because it's kind of moving away from the main cast of the Big Bang Theory, and it's going, sticking with his family. So you have Georgie and Mandy are getting their own spinoff series. That's been fully greenlit. It's happening. It's going to be curious to see if that can have the staying power because of how long Big Bang lasted, how long Young Sheldon lasted, but you're away from the main characters now. Will that have the staying power? Could that be what maybe what some people thought Young Sheldon was going to be, and it's only a couple seasons before it ends. But you never know. Like it has the Big Bang Theory universe now has a staying power.
Yeah, everything's a universe at this point. But no, to your point, that's a testament to how popular the popularity of the Big Bang Theory is carried over into other shows. And can that staying power last for this new show? Only time will tell. It's going to get every chance to be successful. I'm sure they'll put it in the same time slot and, strategically try to make that show a success as well. But to your point, yeah, you're finally starting to break away from those core characters that made that show as special as it was. Will people connect with that character the way they did with Sheldon? Sheldon was obviously one of, if not the most popular character on the show. So kind of keeping with that family, but pivoting towards other members of that family, like, will it work? Who knows? I imagine the first few episodes will do really well, but does it have the staying power beyond that? Networks are pretty quick to pull the trigger on something these days that doesn't click right out the gate. So who knows? Maybe it gets a season, maybe it gets 2 or 3, but we'll see how it does. I'll definitely tune in to give it a chance. Like you, I wasn't an avid watcher of Young Sheldon, but I watched a little bit of it, and it's got its charm, and I can see why it lasted as long as it did. It was just that was one that was hard for me to keep up with a lot of the other stuff that goes on at the same time. But kudos to them for having the long run that they had. The kid now looks like he's practically a grown man at this point. You know what I mean? Like, he started super young and has been around as long as it has. So it's cool to see it, come to an end before he gets too old and is not really believable as young Sheldon at this point. So, good on him. So moving on to our next story, Miramax has announced that their Halloween TV series is going to be like a complete reboot as well. So we've got another reboot, this time for Halloween. I know there was a lot of mixed bags for the last 2 Halloween films that came out, and now it seems like they're getting a TV series that feels like a complete creative reboot based on what they've said.
Yeah, it's going to be curious to see how it goes because, these slasher films from the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s, because they won't die.
Right.
They keep going, and we've had so many different reboots. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how they do it because, we had the original series and we had Rob Zombies, and then we kind of went back to Carpenters and kind of had a mix. So they're sounding like they're going all the way back to the beginning, Halloween 1, starting fresh, new. It's going to be interesting to see how they end up doing that because, we've got 30, 40 plus years of Halloween films that, some that people love, others that they loathe. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can capture a new audience, but also bring back that old audience with this new series, depending on exactly how well they handle it.
Yeah, I know details about the actual series and who's going to be performing in it are kind of scarce at the moment, but it's definitely interesting to see that they want to reboot it again at this point and make a TV series out of it. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like episodically because I feel like these do tend to kind of lend themselves better in film as opposed to TV. So I'm a little cautious about it out the gate, just not really knowing what to expect. Cause he's a killer. He's supposed to rampage for one night and just mercilessly kill. And then, he comes back again later, but it's like, how are we going to make that work in like a 8 to 10 or however many episodes season is going to be really interesting.
Is he going to die in every episode and come back the next episode?
Was it going to be like Kenny in South Park? Like, oh my God, we killed Michael Myers again and he's back.
Yeah. Cause you mentioned the films, mostly it's taking 1 or 2 nights or something. That's not a very long time span for most of the movies for the main story. So is this going to be a 10, 12 episode series that's all one night and you're getting all his different kills and go Halloween 24 edition? So it's telling the entire day through the entire series, but it is going to be interesting because normally with these slasher flicks, you see the villain, Michael Myers is going to die, but you can't have that at the end of every episode. So we've got to see, is he going to die at the end of every season and then come back for another season or something? It's really curious how they're going to be able to bring this into a series format.
I can't not picture Jack Bauer versus Michael Myers at this point. I just can't. I can't not see it now that you mentioned the 24 parallel. But yeah, it still details are scarce as to what it's going to look like, right? So is it like the first season, him going through the trauma of his childhood and his therapy and, becoming Michael Myers, the serial killer at this point, or do we jump right in? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I assume they're probably going to go
beginning,
deeper
like, yeah,
in
like,
what led up to him becoming that. So we might even not get true Michael Myers killing until later in the series.
I don't know. If it involves Jack Bauer, though, I might give it a better shot. But like, I don't get it. But it's definitely going to be something. I love Halloween anyway. Like, you know, Michael Myers is on the, you know, in my opinion, the Mount Rushmore of Halloween slasher villains. So, you know, I'll give it a shot. But I just, without all the details, I don't know what to expect from this, and I'm leaning more towards on the pessimistic side. And I don't like to be that way going into things. I like to give some things the benefit of the doubt, but it's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel right as a TV series, only because it's been in film form as long as it has. So who knows? I hope they prove me wrong.
Yeah, we're used to that format of, we get the whole story in between and then magically resurrected for the next film and so on. So how they stretch that out for a whole series, how they go about it, like I said, I assume it's going to give us some more backstory on things, and we'll get bits and pieces of him for most of it, and then it won't be until like the really last few episodes that we'll get like full, true Michael Myers. But it'll be interesting if it does well. Could this mean, you know, Jason and Freddy and others come back as TV series as well? Because those have, I mean, Friday the 13th hasn't been rebooted as much. Jason and Michael Myers, it has, but it hasn't been touched on a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a little bit more of Michael and Jason showing up than Freddy, but we could see Freddy and Jason possibly coming back if this does well. If they see if it's profitable and works well, I could see them doing the same thing.
Freddy's a little tougher though, because, you know, you have Robert Englund as Freddy for as long as he's been Freddy, and then they tried to make the one where it was Jackie Earl Haley or Haley Earl or whatever his name is. I forget what it is. Sorry, apologies for that. But, and it just, people just, you know, hated it and didn't accept it and didn't love Freddy outside of Robert Englund. Like, you can't lean on that forever. So if you try to reboot something like that, that's going to create a whole other set of issues. I don't know, but it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. That's for sure.
His is definitely the harder one because, you know, Michael and Jason have the mask, have their suits.
Sure.
You just need a big body in there, and that's about it. Like you don't have speech, you don't have anything like that to worry about. Freddy, you do. You have to get an actor that can give a performance.
I mean, if I were to give a take on it, I would probably say just for the dialogue alone and the possibility of stories, Friday the 13th would probably lend itself significantly better to a series, I think.
Didn't it already just have
Friday
one series?
the 13th. A little bit of one, I think, a little miniseries. But I think that killer and that format would lend itself significantly better to a TV series than a Jason or a Michael Myers would. But, you know,
and the way it just popped in my head that I think there was a Friday the 13th series. I don't think it was that well received. So if they try again, it'll be interesting to see if they do. But this could open the doors for other horror, you know, series coming out more. And but we'll see where that goes. Speaking of horror series now, this isn't a horror series. To some men, it may be. The Twilight series of books was extremely popular, of course, got the pop culture phenomenon that was the movies. There's been talks of reboots for a while now, which it's only, I think it's been like 12 years or so since the last movie. So it's been significant amount of time, but is it significant enough to warrant a reboot? But it was just announced that Twilight is being rebooted as a series itself, but it's an animated series. So instead of going live action, they're going animated. So that's kind of mixed because you're telling a love story that's also, you know, vampires and werewolves and everything else, but you're doing an animated form, and it does seem kind of odd that they're taking it animated.
I mean, even you saying that it's been 12 years since the last film, to me, it only feels like it's been 5 years. I mean, those films were like it was Twilight and Harry Potter, right? For the longest time as like the two big movie franchises, like for teens and young adults, right? And to say that it's been 12 years, does it need a reboot? I kind of agree because it still doesn't feel like it's been that long. But to your point, why an animated series? What's the benefit of it? Like, don't do animation just for the sake of animation and call it a reboot. But I don't know. I'm not going to profess to be the biggest like Twilight buff or biggest Twilight fan. I genuinely think I've only seen maybe the first two films. I have not seen the entire series. So
I have.
Come for me in the comments on that. But it just never really resonated with me. But I do understand like the pop culture significance that it had because it was everywhere. You know, the whole Team Edward, Team Jacob thing was like a very big like talking point in the zeitgeist at the time. And I can imagine if you put it out there, it's going to get a lot of attention initially. But like we always say, is the quality of the storytelling going to be strong enough to have any type of significant staying power? Which I don't know. You're reintroducing this type of story to essentially a new generation, and maybe it's smarter to do it in the animated realm. Yeah. It could be. I don't know, but it's definitely a conversation worth having.
He's looking to see if an animated film is going to appeal to the original audience of when the books first came out, when the movies first came out. Sure. You know, significantly older now that those came out. 15, 20 years since all that started. Are they going to care that it's coming back in animated form? But it is looking like it has to be going for a new audience, a younger audience. But are they going to care? Like, we've had some solid animated series and films and shows and stuff come out, but does something like this really translate well into animation? Like, they put out graphic novels of the Twilight books as well. I think they did okay. But yeah, I'm still searching to see if this really feels like the right way to bring this back again.
Well, to kind of piggyback off what I was saying earlier, like at the time, like you said, it was Harry Potter and it was Twilight, right? So one of the two has had the generational staying power, and it's been Harry Potter. You don't necessarily hear Twilight being talked about in the same breath. It really doesn't. Like, it was super popular at the time, but once it's been over, I don't know of that many people, and it could just be, you know, the social crews that I run with, but I don't hear a lot of people like, oh, I went back and watched, you know, the Twilight movies again, like over the weekend. But how many people will say, oh, I just randomly threw on Harry Potter? Like, I literally know somebody who watched a couple Harry Potter movies last night before we recorded this. Like, they were literally watching Harry Potter again, and they've seen the films 15 to 20 times at this point. So does it have that type of staying power that it's going to be popular? We'll see. Time will tell, right? So
yeah, it's one has significantly more talk about and had that longevity to it. I can't think of the last time I really heard about Twilight other than talking about wanting to do a remake and a reboot. But it's kind of funny now that, as you said, Harry Potter and Twilight were so huge for such a long time. They're both now being rebooted because, of course, we've got the Harry Potter live action series coming. And now we have an animated series of Twilight. So it's going to be, I'm going to say that the Harry Potter series is going to do significantly better, but we'll see if the animated series for Twilight brings some new life back into that series.
So we've talked a lot about what has staying power. You know what doesn't have staying power? Madam Web. So we joke, but it's definitely the one movie we had by far our most negative review on. And judging by, you know, the box office numbers that it's done, everybody kind of feels the same, which is unfortunate because it could have been potentially great. Go back in our archives, like we've said before, and check out our review from Madam Web. But Dakota Johnson came out this week and kind of said, you know, based on her experience with it, it's kind of the last film that she's going to make of that ilk. So, you know, take that what you will, but it's probably for the best.
Yeah, she says she doesn't blame the fans. She gets while everyone has been tearing it to shreds. And, I mean, she mentioned some stuff about almost kind of blaming the studio a little bit, that it's, you know, there's so many changes that happened from the moment she signed on to what was filmed, and that it was just, while she had fun with her co-stars, it wasn't the greatest experience. And, yeah, she doesn't really want to do anything like this again. But, yeah, I think it's still sitting at the bottom of one of the worst performing Sony superhero films they've ever made. So it's definitely something that hopefully Sony learns a lesson from too, as they will continue to milk what they have access to, and just hope that they do a little better job when they're preparing these.
Sure. And, you know, not to sandbag on it a little more, but not that we put a ton of emphasis on critic scores or Rotten Tomato scores, but when you're mentioned in the same breath as like a Morbius, that's probably not the best of things anyway. So it's unfortunate that it didn't work out because some of the cast are doing very well for themselves right now, but it just wasn't a movie that clicked with people. And, you know, if that kind of sours her on that experience and she doesn't want to make those types of films, who are we to blame her? I mean, she's done okay for herself, and she comes from a pretty stellar acting background, so I'm fairly confident she'll land on her feet with something else. But yeah, it was definitely worth a mention just because, you know, it's kind of popular to, say what you will about Madam Web at this point. But, even they're starting to poke fun at themselves. So that's where we're at with it.
Of course, on Saturday Night Live, making fun. You definitely didn't see me in Madam Web.
That was great. I like that they're, they can still have some fun with it, and it's not the most serious thing in the world if the film doesn't do well and all that, but they can still have a good sense of humor about it, and hey, they still made money for doing it, so good on them, right?
So we did get confirmation now with House of the Dragon Season 2 is going to debut in June, which I think at first this was a little mixed from the Game of Thrones fans because, Game of Thrones, a final season did not end as well as everyone thought. It wasn't the series finale that everyone... Final season, the series... of the series that everyone expected with it. So, somewhere a little... Okay, House of the Dragon. It did start a little slow, but it was a really great season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they expand on House of the Dragon and continue this series. And I'm glad we don't have to wait that much longer to get it.
Yeah, thank God. Because sometimes they take a lot of time in between seasons on this, and for good reason. They do, they still have a pretty solid track record for this type of show at this point. Like season 8 being what it is, some people will just completely retcon it and say it doesn't exist. That's a little absurd. They put it out, it exists. Well, you feel about it how you feel about it. But I felt like House of the Dragon was actually really well done. And it's got a lot of the things that we like about the original seasons of Game of Thrones, in that it's violent. It's, it tells this heart-wrenching story of, family. You can feel what you want about some of the interfamilial relations, if I can say that, of the show, speaking of the Targaryens. But it's still one of the more popular products out there, and I'm more than excited for season 2 when it comes out.
Yep, me too. It's in June. We don't have an official day yet, but at least we know what month to expect it. And then June's going to be pretty stacked with content as well. So there's a lot coming out this summer for, your entertainment, for movies and TV shows. It's a stacked summer.
It really is. And that's just another one to add to the list, right? At least those episodes drop on Sundays, so it's gonna be fun to keep up with, and it'll be appointment watching for sure when it comes out. Speaking of recent films, Dune Part 2, still doing gangbusters at the box office now. To this point, it has surpassed... It actually had the same opening weekend numbers as Oppenheimer, which is up for Best Picture of the Year. It was the highest grossing film of 2023. And it even has already outpaced domestically Dune Part 1. So, I know Dune Part 1 came out during the pandemic, but how do you feel about how it's done so far?
I mean, the first film of 2024 to cross 100 million mark domestically. It's done extremely well internationally as well. So it's well-deserved. I mean, we absolutely love this film. You can, check out a review for it to see how we really felt, but this was cinema. This was such a great movie. I'm glad it's doing well. They've even shown IMAX screenings of this are sold out for weeks at many locations. So it's because I think Ghostbusters coming up is the next one that may take some screens from them. So it may have a pretty good run with the IMAX screens and everything else. But I'm glad it's doing well. That is a crazy line to me. I know it came out during the height of COVID and everything in 2021, but how in 1 week it already surpassed the entire domestic run of Dune Part 1 is pretty crazy.
Well, what's got me optimistic is the fact that, it surpassed its predecessor already, but it goes to show that not only was the first film popular and it had people hyped for the second film, but this is a movie that's coming out in March, and March isn't traditionally a big blockbuster rush to the theaters and see a film time of the year. That's usually reserved for May to July, really, a 3-month window, and maybe towards the end of the year in November and December, right? So there's little pockets of time where the bigger movies tend to do better, and the fact that it's a March film that's already crushing it at the box office at this point kind of leads me to believe that people are willing to go back to the theaters en masse to see films that they really want to see. And that gives me a lot of hope for, how well the box office is going to do over the summer. Because we've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, it's a big year for movies. There's a ton of stuff coming out. And I can imagine that the theaters are going to be packed. And it's nice to see a film like this at this time of year doing as well as it's doing.
Yeah, and you even look back at Oppenheimer last year and Dune Part 2 at the beginning of this year. These are near 3-hour movies, and people are going to see them. So they're willing to sit those long times to see. And then Dune itself is a very kind of hardcore sci-fi. Like the books are very dense. It's very political. It's very religious. It's very hardcore. And to see people taking to it and Oppenheimer and all these, like you're seeing, you know, Madam Web do really bad with comic books and stuff. That I still see some comic books. We know Deadpool and Wolverine is going to destroy the box office, but we're kind of seeing a shift again that people are enjoying these deeper, longer films, and I'm really excited about that.
It's really impressive because it kind of used to be a death knell for movies, really. Like you had to keep in. It used to be you had to keep in that 90-minute to 2-hour range, and you were golden. Now you've got these films that, to your point, are ranging upwards of 3 hours, and in some cases longer. And they're doing as well as they are. It's actually pretty impressive that these types of films do as well as they do because, you know, with the whole, you can go into the whole cultural, like our attention spans aren't what they used to be due to like social media and cellular phones and all that stuff. I don't know why I said cellular phones. I sound like such a boomer when I say that. I'm such a boomer.
Just yell at some kids to get off your lawn now.
I really wish I could. But yeah, like cell phones and you know, social media and just information at the tip of your fingers at all times, like our attention spans are what they used to be. But it is impressive that people are willing to just sit in a theater for 3 hours and watch these films and be entertained. I love it because, you know, obviously we love movies as much as we do, but it's crazy that they're doing as well as they are.
Yeah, speaking of something that's doing really well is Shogun. It's actually broken the FX records for views for premiere. So The Bear was the record holder for FX, but it broke that with 9 million views for its premiere. That show, we're going to talk about episode 3 here in a little bit, but that's another one this is a very deep, dark adult story, and it's doing gangbusters as well. But on the negative side of it, which it's good and bad, is that they came out talking that Shogun probably will not get a second season. They loved how the book ended, the first book. I think it's a series. So the first book ended. They're like, we loved how that did. We ended where we're good to stay where it is, which it's sad because we're really enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's great because they're not going to try to milk this for all it can. So where it starts off solid and by season 2 or 3 or 4, then it's like, what are we doing now? Like it's ending on its own terms.
Yeah, when you start to get to that point where you stray past the source material and stuff, it's kind of tying up previous conversations. It was a Game of Thrones thing too. Like they had surpassed really where they were at book wise, so they were starting to write their own narratives, and people felt how they felt about it. But I love that they're keeping it as short as it is. It's always a fun dynamic to talk about wanting more from something versus enjoying the fact that it's less, because there's always like something's really good and they take it away and we don't get to see a finish to this. But at this time, they're telling such a good story that I'm more or less okay with it being one season. If it's such a good season, I would almost rather want more from it, knowing I'm not going to get it, rather than, you know, knowing they could have done more and they're just not.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Or getting more and it's
not
lesser quality.
Yeah, that as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so excited to see how this full series plays out. But yeah, like I said, it's a little disappointing that it's not going to go on. But at the same time, if they are happy with how it ended and we get a solid mini series basically now, then I'm going to be more than happy with it.
Yeah, I'm excited. So it sounds like we're only going to get 10 episodes. We're going to keep reviewing it as we watch it. So that'll be running through at least April. So it sounds like they're going to run till the end of April, and then that series will be done, and we'll get to enjoy it in its splendor for all that it is. So we'll continue to talk about it. One thing that I'm enjoying hearing about is one of my favorite more recent games was Watch Dogs. I really enjoyed the game, and it sounds like they're making a live action film starring Sophie Wilde. So I don't know. Did you ever get to play Watch Dogs?
I did. I played the first one. I didn't get around yet to the second one, which is on my list to hit. But this seems one that I don't want to say it's going to be hard to mess up, but it's more grounded in reality. It's about hackers and it's about the modern world and stuff. So it shouldn't be that difficult to adapt. So I'm curious to see, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to come back to it and see how they actually do it. But it's got a good groundwork that they could make a fun, because we saw how Mr. Robot and stuff did. This has similarities to it in a way, but they could do a solid film out of this series.
I think so too. And like you said, there's plenty of good, solid source material to work from with that. And to your point, it is kind of hard to quote unquote mess it up, but it's a video game adaptation at the end of the day. It's always going to have like a 50-50, you know, half are going to be like, don't touch it. Half are going to be like, oh, I can't wait to see what they do with it. So that's going to be fun to see how it comes out. But I'm excited. I'm excited for the film. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, we'll wait to see, you know, what it's going to look like, what the story is going to, what type of story from that material are they going to tell, what does the trailer look like, all those things. But it's definitely something worth keeping up with.
Yeah, I hope they do a good job with it because I enjoyed the games. Like I said, the source material is ripe to make something good out of it if they get the right people behind it. So by the time this episode comes out, we'll know the winners from the Oscars. We wanted to do a little prediction on that, which we feel probably Oppenheimer's going to clear a lot of things as it has. It deserves it. But who do you have as your winner for Best Actor?
It's got to be Cillian Murphy. I mean, the way they're talking about this movie cleaning up, he gave a brilliant performance. It would be shocking for me. My dark horse, if I had to pick a dark horse, it would be Jeffrey Wright. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey Wright was brilliant in his film as well, but Cillian Murphy for sure.
I agree on both of those. I think Cillian should be the front runner. He did a fantastic job, but yeah, there was some really good performances, but I think just Cillian did such a great job that he's going to run away with it.
I agree, but what do you feel about Best Actress?
Probably Lily Gladstone. I think she has shown, and the awards before the Oscars are really showing and trending that she should be the front runner for this. And she gave a great performance in Killers of the Flower Moon.
Brilliant. And
I think she is going to stick with being the front runner for that one.
I think so too. But the dark horse to kind of watch in that one's probably Emma Stone. Mm-hmm. That movie got a lot of buzz as well. It's kind of a dark horse Oscar contender this year. But if it's not Lily, I'd agree. I think if I had to put money on it, it'd be Lily. But Emma Stone's another one to watch out for.
Yeah, and as kind of I mentioned, Best Picture wise, I think Oppenheimer's going to run away with it. There's some really good films this year. We still feel that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse should have been in with the main film. I don't know if it would have beaten Oppenheimer, so it's kind of maybe a good thing that it is only in the animated film, because we do feel, or at least I feel, it's going to win Best Animated Feature. 100%. But do you agree on Oppenheimer for Best Picture?
It feels like it, but I wanted to give a little bit of love to Barbie as well. I think Barbie's getting a little bit of buzz. They may throw a shock in there and give it to Barbie. Wouldn't surprise me, especially given the whole director situation that happened this year at the Oscars with a little bit of the drama surrounding that and the fact that Margot Robbie wasn't nominated. Maybe it's kind of like a make right by the Academy and give it, and it could be a little bit of an upset, but I still think it's Oppenheimer that takes all of it. It should. Yep. In my opinion, it's a brilliant film. I mean, we both have it, very highly ranked. If you go back and watch our
Christopher Nolan is such a masterful filmmaker. Like, he just knows how to make a film.
Yeah, and one of my dark horse contenders, I know we haven't really talked about the film necessarily, but it was Past Lives. If you get a chance to watch it, absolutely brilliant film. I love it. I wish I had seen it by the time we'd given our top 5 films, because it's probably up there for me at this point, but it's such a beautiful film as well. If you get a chance to watch Past Lives, if you're interested in any of the Oscar films, definitely give that one a watch, because that's really good.
So yeah, we'll take a look at all the Oscar winners on our next episode. If you want to talk about the Oscars after the fact, come over to our Discord. Yep. And we'll set up a channel over there where we can talk in the TV channel about the Oscars, see who you felt was snubbed, who didn't get the recognition they deserved, or if you're happy on who won. But yeah, come over to our Discord and we can talk Oscars before that next episode.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. But moving into our TV review for the week, we're up to episode 8 of Apple TV's Masters of the Air. So we're one episode away from the finale now. It's the penultimate episode. We get a little more clarity on where we're at in the film. We mentioned we get a little bit of a time reference, but now some of the episode revolves around D-Day. Mm-hmm. D-Day is for history buffs, no pop quiz this week, but D-Day is one of the most, if not the most significantly historical day from World War II. Mm-hmm. So they touch on it a little bit, but you get a lot more, time with the POWs. We finally get the Tuskegee Airmen introduced in this as well. Like, how did you feel about this episode and how it went?
And honestly, this episode wasn't exactly what I was expecting from the preview, from where we were, because we felt the last episode was pretty much a setup episode that we were going to get something big here. This still felt like, it didn't feel like a step backwards or a step forward. It just kind of was in the same space. It's more set up for that finale. Like, yeah, we got just a little bit of D-Day. So we kind of start off 3 days before D-Day, and we're looking at Crosby, who's not wanting to sleep because they have this, what ended up being the most important missions that have ever been ran during the war. Yep. And he was up for over 60 hours not wanting to sleep. So he ended up sleeping through, which, a little bit of a spoiler, he slept through D-Day.
Yeah.
And so along with that, because he's kind of telling the story for us now, we got a little bit of touch. I mean, it's been done before, of course, many different times. But we just got a little bitty touch of D-Day and kind of moved on right past it and just moved back into the story with the characters, which I was kind of surprised. I thought we were going to see a little bit more out of it. It didn't really hurt anything with the episode, but I was expecting to see a little bit more. Most of our action we got was with the Tuskegee Airmen, which I thought they did great, and also touching on, of course, the sour and poor notes with racism, even amongst the soldiers and with them. Like, they were such an incredible group who were, we saw at this time that we finally get to see them, over 500 missions have been run, and even seeing that they were running a mission that they didn't feel great about, that they weren't sure they were going to have enough fuel to get home. Yeah.
There was a lot of emphasis placed on those guys, but I think it's an interesting take. Looking at it from a little bit more of an entire view of the series so far, it's, they weren't really involved in D-Day. The group that we've been following the entire series, they weren't, because most of them are either in POW camps or they're in like some kind of administrative role, or, spoiler alert, they're dead. Like, they're no longer with us. So it was definitely a little bit like, I think I kind of went in with similar expectations as you, is like, okay, it's D-Day. It's going to be like this big, fight, like you're gonna feel like what happened during that day, and it did feel like it just kind of glossed over it a little bit. Like,
it kind of went up and then we come
right back down. And like there was a little bit of action in there, but a lot of that drama was around the Tuskegee Airmen, like you said, in the mission that they ran, where they didn't know if they were going to make it or not, and then they, spoil it a little bit, but they do kind of some of them wind up in the camp with, our main actors, Buck and Bucky and their group that are trying to survive at the POW camp. And a lot of that's starting to shift and build its way towards what's going to be the final episode here, where, judging by the previews, it's kind of are they going to, like, they give themselves three options. They're either like, we're going to be executed, we're going to be forced to march, or we're going to make a break for it. And judging by the preview for the next episode, you kind of see where some of them wind up with that, because you see some potential elements of all three, right? Some of them coming into play. So to your point, with it only being 9 episodes, I felt a little, I don't want to say put off, but a little taken aback by the fact that it was a little bit more of a, like a continual setup for what has to be, I didn't see the run times of the episode, but I'm hoping it's an extended finale. Like, it's a little bit longer than some of these episodes. These episodes are averaging about an hour a piece, 50 minutes to an hour an episode. But you got to figure, with all the stuff that they have to wrap up, or I feel like they're going to wrap up, it's got to be a little bit of a longer episode to tie up some of these loose threads.
Yeah, because this is a series finale, not a season finale, too.
So there's no more story being told beyond this next episode. What we get's going to be it. And then hopefully we'll have them wrap up with what happens to the people that make it out and things of that nature. But there was a lot left unresolved leading into this finale, which it's going to have to be action-packed to tell the finale of these stories for these guys.
Yeah, it was still a solid episode overall, but having back-to-back kind of setups after having one of the best episodes of the series, and then we get kind of back-to-back kind of slow setup. Like, it sets ground for a lot of stuff, but we've kind of got away from the action a little bit. We've kind of got the same story told in little bits and pieces that it's moving, because we got with this episode, we found out that all of our soldiers and pilots in the PW camps have been there for at least 8 months or longer. So we got a significant chunk of time. I think by the end of the episode, it's closer to a year that they've been in there. And we also got a little drama within the camps between Buck and Bucky, whether that was real or fake or played up, and we see plans and stuff going. But yeah, it just kind of felt like more of the same. It almost felt like these two episodes, the previous episode and episode 8, were kind of just one long setup episode.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not to say that I didn't like the episode. It was just you were hoping for a little more substance to it, but it does feel like I'm hoping that they pull the nose up on episode 9, and it's just wall to wall, like let's move this forward, and let's just get to the end, and like have some resolution for these people, and maybe get to the end of the war. I don't know how much of a time jump they're going to have, but where they wind up with, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited for it, though. I've enjoyed, watching this over the last several weeks, and we're finally at the finale next week, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they end it. Like I said, it feels like it needs to be a 2-hour movie basically to wrap this up, just because there is so much to do. But they've done a brilliant job so far. There's been a lot of setup and a lot of character depth and look into it. But I said we have a lot to really go over in the finale, which we're going to be talking about next week, and we'll see how they wrap this whole series up.
Yeah, you can watch episodes of Masters of the Air on Apple TV. The finale drops next week, and then you'll be able to see all of the episodes in totality if you haven't watched it already. Highly recommend you giving it a shot and starting it. And if you can, catch up with us in time for the finale so we can talk about it again next week.
Yep. Moving on to the other show we're currently watching, which is Shogun. We're in episode 3 now, and this still continues to just... As we talked about kind of with attention spans with things with the long movies, this is a series that forces you to put the phone away, put things away. You need to sit and watch. So if you're watching the sub version, dub version you can probably get away with, but watching the sub, it forces you to pay attention. You just see the amazing story that they're telling. Like, this was another great episode for me. It moved the story along well. We got some great humor that I wasn't expecting, some great action, but overall I thought this was such another solid episode.
I agree. And it's got a little bit of a mix of everything. Like you said, it's violent. It's got language, obviously, as we preface by saying it's not for the entire family. There's definitely violence. There's definitely bloodshed. There's some big action. There's some vulgar language. There's a little bit of everything. But I'm really starting to connect with some of the characters, especially John Blackthorne, who kind of goes through a bit of a ringer here for these first few episodes, but getting to where he gets by the end of this episode, brilliantly done, brilliantly acted. Like it's so much fun to see the story that they're telling and letting it unfold. And you deal with the different power dynamics and the power plays made by everybody, and some of the brilliant moves, some of the sneaky moves, some of the battle scenes, some of the humor that comes out of that. It's so much fun. I'm really enjoying this show. Okay. FX for me is one of those networks that when they hit, they hit. I mean, they got some shows that are amazing over the years. Like, Sons of Anarchy was as brilliant as it was. You go back to The Shield. So many incredible shows have come from FX, which I never thought would have been the case. But like when they hit, and they've got a hit here, in my opinion. It is a fantastic show. And like you said, it's not one that I don't want to be distracted while I'm watching. Because to your point, I watch the sub version on Hulu as well. Like, I don't watch the dubbed version on the network. I watch it on Hulu, and you have to pay attention. Like, I don't speak Japanese, so I have to pay attention. They have the subtitles, obviously, so you get the context of the story, but it's so well done and so well told that they capture, like, emotion and honor, and, it's so well done. I can't give it a high enough praise. It's one of my favorite shows that have come out in a long time. Like,
it really is. It's so good. Like, you feel like you're transported back into the 1600s.
Yes.
The set designs, the clothing and outfits, every actor fits their role so well. Even like Yabu, who is that shifty, sneaky guy who's got a little odd weirdness to him, but he's also kind of playing both sides of this, which you get Lord Toranaga. He knows that, and he's so brilliantly acted, because he's playing so, as I mentioned with our review of the first 2 episodes, Lord Toranaga is playing this chess match, which he looks to be a master of chess, and he's putting all the pieces in line. And, a big part of this episode is him making some big moves, because as we found out through episodes 1 and 2, they're trying to overthrow him. They're trying to make sure that they can take the power and they don't want him involved, and using honor and everything else for what he's pledged and committed, trying to keep him in Osaka so he can basically meet his death. And we see in this episode, well, I'm not going to be a pawn in your game, you're going to be a pawn in mine. And he does all these brilliant moves to position himself, other people. Like, he is a master of movement with things that's really setting the story forward in a great way.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then the power move that he does make at the end, I think, is absolutely brilliant because he kind of ties everybody's hands. It's a lot of fun. So it's going to be fun to watch them navigate throughout the rest of the series and where it ultimately winds up, because we still have 7 more episodes. Mm-hmm. It's only episode 3, and there's 10 episodes in what, like we mentioned before, is going to be the only season of this as it lines up, which I'm both happy and sad to your point, but it's so well done. I can't recommend this enough. If you go out of your way to watch it, please do. It's worth any amount of time you can invest in watching this. Like you said, visually, it's stunning. The acting and writing are brilliant. It's not a difficult plot to follow. It's really not, because you do have politicalness. You do have a little bit of religion involved with the different warring religions and factions and stuff like that within these groups. But it's a really well-told story that is fairly easy to follow, but it's so brilliantly written, so well put together. Visually, it's stunning. Like, the score in the show is amazing as well. Like, if you're nerds like we are about all of those sort of things, it's worth a watch. I cannot recommend it enough.
And I've actually been surprised about the amount of humor that we've been getting, and it doesn't feel out of place, because this is a pretty serious and overall dark story with things, but the humor has been such a great, like, whoa, I wasn't expecting him to say that, or the banter back and forth between a few characters. And as I mentioned, episode 1 and 2 with Lord Tornaga and his wife Kata, about their dynamic back and forth. There's some humor. Like, I wasn't expecting to have a whole lot of humor in a serious, but it fits, it works, and it just makes me love it even more, because everything just fits together so well with this series.
John Blackthorne is quickly becoming one of my favorite TV characters, because the actor that plays him is doing such a brilliant job. The writing is intelligent. It's so much fun. He's vulgar, he's brash, but he's also smarter than he lets on too. Yeah. And we kind of talked before then, if you've seen the episode where he's getting patched up by the part of the episode where he's getting patched up by the doctor, absolutely hilarious, because you have to watch it for it to make sense, but kind of sees it as witchcraft. It's funny. And then him not knowing whether, like, not seeing that it's odd that he could bathe more than once a week also made me laugh. But
like, you want me to get sick or something by taking a bath more than once a week?
Yeah, you want me to catch the whatever he called it? Like, oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, he delivers his lines so well, like, just so perfectly cast with his voice and his accent and delivering everything. Like, there's nobody who's out of place in this series from the roles that they're playing, and everyone is just so well. Like, we cannot recommend this series enough. You can see the first 3 episodes of Shogun on FX and Hulu. Again, FX is dubbed and subbed, while Hulu is fully subbed with, the English actor speaking English. I can't recommend enough to do the full subbed on Hulu, just because I feel like it keeps you in. I'm not saying the dubbing is bad at all. The actors do a good job speaking and doing the voices and stuff, but it takes you out of it, seeing in things not matching up, and the original Japanese actors do such a great job. It feels like you really need to see their whole performance to really appreciate just how amazing this show is.
Couldn't agree more. Definitely looking forward to seeing that wrap up for sure. But moving into our movie review, so going from Japanese samurais to animated Kung Fu, we have Kung Fu Panda 4, which is the latest installment, starring Jack Black as Po, the Dragon Warrior. And in this film, Po's on a little bit of an adventure to find a successor. He's been tasked with finding the next Dragon Warrior at this point, and the film kind of goes through, like, him coming to terms with not necessarily wanting to move on, kind of being complacent with being the Dragon Warrior. He feels comfortable with that, but now he's being asked to move to spiritual leader of the village, of the valley, or whatever it's called. I don't remember, but it sets up that story And, you know, we get the introduction of Aquafina as the fox, who, you know, we get introduced to it very early in the film, and, you know, the adventures that they go on at that point. How did you feel about the film?
I mean, I love Jack Black, and I've enjoyed the Kung Fu Pandas, watching with my kids. I took my family to it. My girls, you know, absolutely loved it. They had a ton of fun with it. It's been a series that adults can enjoy as right along with the kids. Is saying that, like, I did enjoy it overall. I did feel like it was lacking a little bit of the charm that the other three, you know, without giving any spoilers away, we were missing a few characters. We didn't get a lot of that back and forth dynamic. There's small bits and pieces between a few of the characters, but I think it lost a little bit of its charm, but I still thought it was a solid, you know, story overall.
Sure.
You know, we're in the fourth one. There's been animated series done about Poe, so there's been a lot of Kung Fu Panda that's been around, but I don't know if it's getting to a point where you're maybe getting a little too much Kung Fu Panda, but I thought it was solid overall, just lost a little bit of its charm.
I don't disagree with that. I think it's still a ton of fun. I mean, it's still a good animated film.
Okay.
It really is. It's short, which is a direct contrast to the films we've been talking about before with the 3-hour films. It was a crisp 90-minute movie, and it moved quickly. Like, I didn't feel like I was in the theater for even 90 minutes by the time it was over. It felt kind of short. Like, and it's probably just me being used to seeing longer films at this point and comparing it to that.
Shorter,
it definitely felt like a shorter runtime, but the story I felt was crisp. It moved along at a good pace. It didn't like dally too much in anything other than like what he's setting out to do, and just kind of sticking to that with a little bit of side stuff and a little bit of humor with, like, you know, his two dads and, you know, the adventure that they go on a little bit. And it's a little bit of a side quest, but it mostly sticks to the narrative of Poe. And yeah, I think they do a good job of moving it along, and it kind of sets up what could potentially be opportunities to move through other characters as well, without trying to spoil it too much, because he does eventually settle on a successor, and you get a little bit of that, but it doesn't feel like an ending.
Yeah, it's not the end. Not the end of the story, but is it the ending pose? It's the end. You know, there's a lot of different directions they can go now. Especially there really isn't a bonus scene, but right after the film ends, we do get an extended scene to end it. So it's not an after credit scene, but it's an additional bonus scene here that allows us to see a little bit more, which we also get some more things that we didn't see come back in here. But like I said, it wasn't a bad film at all. It solid film within the series. It just, I don't know, some of the humor fell a little flat. It just felt a little, and like you said, it was very straightforward. It went from point A to point B. There wasn't a lot of deviation or anything, from which the others had a little fun back and forth, and you had a little off. Like, this was just kind of straight through and done, which could also have been a little bit of it. Like, it just felt like it just went straight through its story without giving us a whole lot more. And but overall, it was fun. But for me, what the overall feeling on is, my kids absolutely loved it. They had a ton of fun with it. And, you know, what else could I ask from an animated film that I take my family to than my kids getting a lot of enjoyment out of it?
And I think with these types of movies, that's the barometer, right? Like, these films aren't really made for, like, you and me. Like, we can find enjoyment in them, and I still do. But if kids are enjoying them, you're money at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen the box office numbers yet, because they haven't come out, because obviously it's a brand new film, and by the time we're recording this, spoiler, a little earlier than we normally do. We don't have the box office numbers yet, but I can imagine it's gonna do pretty well. I mean, it's a popular franchise enough to make 4 of them, so imagine it's gonna do a little well, with a little bit of the Dune carrying over too, and like seeing what the box office ultimately winds up looking like. But to your point, your daughters loved it. I was in the theater with a bunch of kids. They were cheering, hooting, and hollering, laughing when they needed to. Like, they were having a good time with it. At the end of the day, that's all we can kind of ask for like this type of film. And I think it did the trick. So if you're into the previous films, by all means, you will like this film. Like,
there's no reason to skip or miss Kung Fu Panda 4. Like I said, even though it feels like it lost a little bit of its charm, it's still a solid animated feature. And if you have any interest, your kids or you yourself have any interest in it, it's well worth going to see. And
I will say, visually, like, I know we didn't really touch on it visually. Visually, it's a beautiful beautiful animated film.
Yeah, the animation is still top notch and great incredible visuals with a bunch of fun transitions. Like it was visually very appealing.
Visually spectacular, I think, and it's. I don't want to draw the parallels, but I do feel like it had a little bit of Endgame vibe to it, based on the callbacks to the previous movies as well. Like with what the main bad is trying to accomplish, you see some of the past films tied into this. So not quite Endgame-ish, but a little bit. If you see the film, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, we did get portals opening and people showing up.
Yeah,
it felt a
little Endgame-y, but like it's definitely not Endgame.
Yeah, like the villains in it have always kind of been pretty serious with it, and this one as well. The Chameleon was very serious. There wasn't a lot of humor, jokes, or anything to be had with her. She was a very straightforward, serious villain.
And it seemed like she was voiced by Viola Davis, by the way, who's an absolutely brilliant actress. And I think you can kind of tell she was having some fun with that role, I think, just based on the dialogue and the things that character does in the film. Ton of fun. So, like, kudos to her for, bringing that character to life and, like, doing pretty good with the villain, with what she was given. But, yeah, definitely worth watching.
Yeah, so Kung Fu Panda 4 is in theaters now. We definitely recommend checking it out. Take your kids, go have a fun family day, or don't have kids, still go check it out. Like, it's still more than enough for adults to be able to enjoy it.
Yep, absolutely.
So moving on to what's coming out this week, we have One Life, which is an Anthony Hopkins biopic drama, which I'm actually interested in checking out. It actually came out last year in European countries, just now making it to the States, but it's another World War focused film about gentlemen who end up helping a lot of kids and families during the war escape and go. And there's a very famous clip of him being in a studio audience, and they're talking about it, and it ends up that he's in the audience, and everybody else in the audience are kids and families that he helped. And so they've made a full film telling his life with, of course, Anthony Hopkins is absolutely brilliant. I know he's going to nail playing this character, very much a drama that looks like it'll be pretty solid to check out.
Absolutely. You put Anthony Hopkins in anything, like he's, like you said, brilliant actor. His accolades, we could list them, they're a mile long, but definitely worth a movie. Definitely a movie worth going to see if you're into that type of filmmaking. It definitely looks like an interesting watch for sure.
Yep. On the streaming side, we have a Lindsay Lohan rom-com coming out on Netflix called Irish Wish. You can see that on March 15th. So we're starting to see her little bit more coming back into Hollywood, getting a few more acting roles. I think we didn't touch on news. I think Freaky Friday 2 is going to be happening. So we're seeing Lindsay Lohan come out a little bit more back into Hollywood.
And good for her, because you'd like to see, like, no matter what you feel about people's, their work or their films, you hope to see people who have very publicly struggled with various things in their lives, like, do better, get better, and potentially have a career renaissance. Hollywood's full of redemption stories, and I hope that she has one as well. I was laughing when you mentioned Lindsay Lohan, because we go from Anthony Hopkins to Lindsay Lohan, and those two, in my opinion, couldn't be like more diametrically opposed on the acting spectrum. But good for her. Like, it's definitely one that, if you like those types of films, definitely one worth going to check out. But just the side by side comparison: Anthony Hopkins, Lindsay Lohan, like, not in the same lane.
Lindsay, send any hate towards him. All to him.
Bring it on.
I didn't do it.
Bring it on. But no, I'm happy. I'm happy for her. I do genuinely hope it does well.
Yeah, because you got to look at Robert Downey Jr., who looks on a fast track to just ruin his career, and he's had such a resurgence after he got his life back in order, and then come to the MCU, Oppenheimer, everything else. He has had such a huge career resurgence when you thought he was potentially going off the deep end there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping Lindsay Lohan generally does well, so I'm pulling for sure. Yep. But moving into digital releases for this week, we have the film Drive Away Dolls is coming out on March 12th on digital. That's definitely one that you and I have both plan on checking out for sure. Yep. That's one that's on our short list of things we want to watch. So wanted to show some love to that. That's coming out on digital on March 12th. Also coming out on TV, on Apple TV, is Manhunt, which is the story of the hunt for John Wilkes Booth. That's another historical one. The trailer for that looked really good. I'm looking forward to checking that out as well. And it comes out on March 15th.
Yeah, that was one when we did our TV preview that I was really looking forward to, because Apple TV Plus has been doing a really good job with series. I'm always up for something historical that can make me. John Adams series on HBO was fantastic. We've had so many. Of course, we've been loving Masters of the Air, so see something around Abraham Lincoln and the manhunt for John Wilkes Booth is going to be interesting. And I'm curious to see how well they did it. It's supposed to be done in a more serious tone, so I'm curious to see how well this series turned out.
Yep, definitely worth a watch. And like I said, it comes out March 15th, so look for that on Apple TV Plus.
Yep. For our next episode, episode 11, we will be giving our thoughts on Shogun episode 4, the series finale of Masters of the Air, and a review of the horror film Imaginary.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to checking out Imaginary. It'll be our first horror film that we've reviewed on here, so I'm very much looking forward to that. You and I are both big fans of horror films, so it's fun to finally get one that we can go to the theater, sit down and watch, and give a review on for that as well, and we're looking forward to that. That's it, man. Episode 10, we are done. Thank you so much for all of your love and support once again. You can check us out on all of our social medias, YouTube, anywhere you find your podcast that you can listen. You can also go to willbringthepopcorn.com for all of our social media handles there, all the latest news that we have. You can also join our Discord. Our Discord will always be listed in the link in our YouTube videos as well. You can also find the link to it from our website as well. And who knows, maybe coming up soon, we'll finally have some more news on that merch that we've been teasing about too as well. So that is also in the works. We can't thank you enough for your support. Until next time, I am Josh, that is Brad, and we will see you next week.